Testing audio, this is Murray. Hey, Christine. More, yep, I see that. I can sign in as the host.
Okay, go to the, see where the microphone is on the left-hand side.
Stand by.
Murray's gonna call in. 2 seconds. Call in, is he sick?
You on a phone or a computer?
I'm on an iPad connected to Zoom, to the Zoom meeting.
So it's a different layout.
I do see I can enter a host key to claim host.
No. You want to go to where there's the, should say recording. So the underneath or next to the microphone.
Yep, I see recording, but I can't change it.
He can't.
Can't say stop.
No.
No, he probably has to be the host in order to stop it. Hi, Olivia. All bundled up.
Okay, so it just says host is not in the meeting yet.
I do hear you, Christine.
That's because I'm using my iPad. We'll just give it a second. So do we need to change the view? Oh. I don't want to hear myself. Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and start the meeting. He's trying to figure that out. There are 6 people on, and Keith and I are 2 of them. We do have Murray Colette, who's a planning board member. He's joining us remotely. He is not well. There he is. I think he just waved. So that's what it looks like to the people at home. Oh. Sorry. Everybody's curious, and the meeting is being recorded. So we do have a quorum present in person. So we'll go ahead with the minutes from December 6th. Does anybody have any changes?
I have a couple.
Okay.
Page 5. Under number 3 ADU. The first paragraph, second to last sentence. So yeah, that sentence, yep. So to put forward to the town, it would be on the ballot, not in the warrant article, it'd be on the ballot. Then the next one I have is, I don't know how to handle this one. So, so basically, first page, bottom of the page, the last sentence, David Weber asked where the house would be located on the property. Christina pointed out that the 250-foot square identified on the plat that was projected on the screen. So move forward from that real quick, just to the next page, page 2. Second paragraph. Middle of the paragraph, it says the proposed 250 square development area. So I think there's just a confusion, Christine, I think,
Mhm.
about the 250-foot square that we asked for in our subdivision regulations. The intent of that, the spirit and intent of that, why we have that, was to avoid narrow and odd shaped lots.
Yep,
So it's not actually we don't have a development area in our zoning,
right, okay.
and a lot of people think that, so it's not, you know.
Yeah,
nothing
it's not
against you.
necessarily where the house would go.
Not necessarily where it
Right.
goes, yeah, so I don't know how we want to word that, but
Okay,
it's just that if somebody read that, they could think that.
so do you
You
think
know.
we should just cross that out and start with the road agent feels the driveway will not interfere with these features? Because we were talking about the wetlands and the water crossing and the stone wall.
Yeah, I guess we could do that, yeah.
Oh, and then cross out the in order to access the development site. Does that need to be crossed out as well?
Yeah, because you wouldn't want to use the 250-foot square doesn't have anything to do with
Right.
that, right?
Right, we don't know where the development site would be.
Right. That's all, it's a small detail, but it's.
Okay, yeah. that'd be
Needs to be noted.
Good to clarify.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Hey, Christine, I have a change, a recommended change at the top of page 4.
Okay, Murray, I'm having a hard time hearing. Did you hear what you said?
Top of page 4.
Top of
Top
page
of page
4?
4. Yep, there's in the second
Can you turn
line
the
on the
volume
top
up
of
at
page.
all?
How is that?
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, in the second line, at the top of page 4, there are 2 numbers that don't have any units associated with them that probably mean acres. So just add acres after those 2 numbers, which I think is the intent.
I'm sorry.
He wants you to add acres after 3.387 and 13 point, top of page 4. Very first paragraph, all the references to the acreage size. Well, that's actually only 2. Would need to just say acres.
That's not on the top of my page
Oh,
4.
really?
Yeah.
Oh,
It's on the bottom of page 3
okay,
on mine.
interesting.
So could you just say again now that I know where you are?
So on the bottom of page 3, in further discussion, that paragraph where it says 3.387, if you'd like that to say acres afterwards.
And then the 13.227.
Yep,
As well.
correct.
Did you have anything else, Murray?
Only on there's a reference down below to the natural resources inventory regarding receipt of the first invoice, and we also requested at the time to request the second invoice. I don't have that directly in front of me as to where it is.
I don't know where it is.
Yeah, I'm looking for where that is as well. So that looks like it's on the bottom of page 5. And it says
Yes.
the master plan natural resources inventory. That I had received an invoice for phase 1, which I would approve. We have also, yeah, I've got that in my update for tonight, Murray, that we did get the second invoice that I've also authorized for payment.
Great, thank you.
So is there any change needed?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think I'd gotten the second invoice at that last meeting. I think it came after.
Correct. It was purely you were requesting it.
Yep. No, I have that in my notes for tonight.
Okay, great.
I have
Yeah,
a
I'm good.
question on page 3.
Okay,
At the very top, it said George offered to speak to Alvin Holt's progeny, pointing out that Alvin Holt Jr.'s oldest daughter administered the estate.
Sorry, what paragraph are you in?
The first sentence is top of page 3.
His oldest daughter, not older.
Yeah, Alvin Holt Jr.'s oldest daughter. And I spoke with her today. And she said that she had no knowledge of that 1 acre parcel and didn't care what they did with it.
Well, it's up to the select board
She
at this
didn't even know-
point.
She didn't even know it existed.
Yeah, well, it's up to the select board, and then I don't know if Mr. Rowe is gonna be pursuing any other
Uh-huh.
action. Okay, was there anything else? Alan, did you have anything? So is there a motion to?
I make a motion to accept the amended minutes.
Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote.
yes.
George,
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
Murray?
That's our wave.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Okay. So next up is the continuation of the hearing for the 4 lot line adjustments and 1 minor subdivision that was presented by Nick Rowe at our last meeting. So we'll go into the hearing and I will, it's 7:09, so maybe we're 1 minute early, but I will just share that I heard from Pete Caswell today and they were not able to get the test pits done. He went over on Saturday and their digger, their backhoe wouldn't start. So they weren't able to do it over the weekend, and they'll let me know when they're able to do it. So he has requested a continuation to our next planning board meeting. So if there are, I will still take if there's any questions or public comments about that subdivision, we can still do that portion of the hearing, but we won't be making any decisions tonight. So it is 7:10. We'll officially open the hearing. And are there any questions, comments about? Go ahead, Connie.
Just not going on. I don't know what's sitting under the sound, but is that speaker working? I can hear this, but not this one. So I just.
Testing. Okay. Anything else about the subdivision application? Okay, so I can close that portion of the hearing and entertain a motion to continue to the next planning board meeting, which is January 3rd, I believe.
Yeah, Christine, I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. George?
Yes.
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 And Murray?
Yes.
Great, thank you. So we'll continue the hearing at the next meeting on January 3rd. Assuming he gets that taken care of. And just for the record, we do have until February 9th to make a decision on that application. That's part of the RSA. And I let him know that he hopefully will get it done before then. And if not, he'd have to resubmit. We'd have to disapprove the application and he'd have to resubmit if it doesn't get done by then. So we'll move on to regular business and take questions or comments from the audience. If there are any questions or comments related to ADUs, I'll take those now because we do have a guest speaker tonight. So that will be an opportunity for the board to take questions. At the hearing, when we have a hearing. At the hearing, not tonight, at the hearing. Because we have a guest speaker, I'd like to get that information first.
Yeah. I would say that.
Yeah, but that would be at the public hearing. That would be when we would take public comments. No, at the next meeting. We need to gather information and then decide if we're going to have anything forward. And if we are going to put something forward, then we would have a public hearing. And Murray's dog commented. Well, I mean, we don't know what we're presenting yet, so there's nothing really to comment on. So if you have
Right.
questions or concerns, now is the time. Yeah, because we haven't presented anything. Right. Well, we don't know what we're presenting yet either, which is
Yeah.
kind of the point.
No, I meant if they comments, do we ask them what you want?
Questions are generally directed to the board, not to the guest speakers.
Truly.
Yes, through us, but not tonight at a hearing.
They won't be here. That's fine.
Well, hopefully that's why I'm wondering if you have any concerns. Sure. Can you come to the microphone? Thank you. Hi. Yeah,
And I'm not sure.
yeah, you gotta hold it way up. We've had,
Okay, hi. I apologize if I should already know the answer to this question. And I'm very new to this process, right? So I don't know what I don't know here. As a citizen, I'm unclear what the purpose of what problem we're solving with some of these initiatives, because I don't know what the problem is that we're solving with things like ADU zoning changes and other things like that. And I just would like to get that clarity in my head.
sure. Do you want to answer that, Bruce? You're,
Yeah, I could try. Yes, and Nate, well, as you maybe have heard, we've been working for several years on affordable housing, or the discussion of affordable housing here in Temple. And we've been, we've had several in past years. I think prior to you moving back, we had forums and guest speakers similar to Carol, very knowledgeable people on that subject. And to try to come up with some ideas to do our fair share as a town, as a community, to address the affordable housing, or not so much affordable housing, just housing in general. And so we rather than take drastic measures, we kind of this year picked just ADUs, accessory dwelling, which we already have adopted in our zoning. And we are looking specifically at acreage sizes. And I think Carol will address this in a little bit, but it's the consensus is through a lot of the professional planners and our board that it might not need to be double the size of the lot. Typically 3-acre zoning is what we have in Temple. So our zoning now says you need to have a detached accessory dwelling unit, you would need 6 acres. So that's possibly what we're going to propose. But we are going to have a hearing. If we do move forward to that, we will have a hearing in January where everybody in town will have an opportunity to show up and speak and express how they feel, or in either way. I don't know if does that help? It's a bigger picture, but we're just picking something very small at the moment, the ADUs, accessory dwelling units.
Yeah.
We're not looking, we're looking at the big picture, but we're not looking this year to present anything to the town more than something very simple.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand what is the problem, right? Like, what is the problem today that we're solving by making any, like, why do we have to, are people complaining about this, or is this I guess, what problem are we solving by changing it?
well, I mean, I think it's all been all over the news that there's a housing shortage. And
Yeah, the occupancy of available rental properties in the state's like under 1%.
Yeah.
The vacancy, I mean.
right. And there's less than 30 days of inventory on the market right now. So Specific to Temple, I can tell you there were 2 instances in the last couple of years where someone wanted to put in a detached ADU for a family member because they couldn't afford to purchase on their own. And they were turned down. They were not able to do it because they didn't have the correct acreage. So there's a problem for 2 residents who wanted to have family members live nearby. One was an older person and the other one was a young family just starting out and couldn't afford a place to live.
And also, I recently saw a study that came out that almost 50% of people between 18 and 29 are living in their parents' house still.
Yeah.
That's,
Okay,
So I
so,
think Nate, when you hear Carol speak tonight, she's gonna probably answer a lot of your questions and a lot of the mystery in your mind about what we're working on. But like Christine said, this isn't a forum, this isn't a hearing.
yeah,
Because, this is more of a workshop for the board, the planning board, to kind of get some ideas to maybe
And
have
ask
that.
Technical
January.
questions.
So if we, so it's not that we don't want to hear from you, because we do,
Yeah.
100%. But if we tonight turn this into a forum / hearing type atmosphere, it's not going to help us as a board to be, it will be a lot of interruptions and
Yeah.
too many questions when we really just want the elected officials that are working on this to have that education with professional like Carol.
and I understand.
Yeah.
that. I'm trying
Yeah.
to clarify in my head, what is the actual problem, right?
Yeah.
And this is a,
Carol's gonna answer that for sure, and many more questions
Right.
that you probably would have, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So I'd like to say something. If you don't mind, I'm gonna take this.
Yeah,
So my question really has to do with, I understand affordable housing and the need for housing. There's no question about that. Of course, I think a lot of people have one of the questions is, so do we have to do it for every, how much do we have to do to help? And that leads me into, we understand the town is going to change and grow. I think we all accept that. And I wish we had an overall plan. I don't see this as a small adjustment. I see this as the beginning of major adjustments. And if you had an overall plan to start with, then you could have fit affordable housing into it or not. But once you get on to affordable housing or middle housing or whatever they call it, you already let the horse out of the barn. You're going to go back and say, oh, no, now we can't. You've got too much. I mean, again, I've suggested you work with the Conservation Commission and that you get an overall plan, not just with conservation. They have a lot of ideas too about how to do developments. Isn't all just related to the inventory. So that would be my wish, that you would not take this step until you've taken the first step, which I see as an overall plan.
comment or?
From my point of view, the charrette was the overall plan to start things. And so today, what we've decided is to assist with that. We've got the various committees now are actually putting forward their thoughts on how to progress next with the next stages of the charrette. But this, for the ADU, is a simple fix that can be combined later with the ideas of that. But this is just a simple fix to help people in the short term.
Anybody else want to comment? Anyone else in the audience? Can you use the microphone, please?
When I meant a plan, I didn't mean step one is a charrette. I think we heard loud and clear what the people of town wanted during that charrette. But I was talking about a plan from the planning board about growth and where it should be. And in that could be ADUs. And what role do they take in that overall plan? again, I say, once you take this step, you can't close the barn. You're going to close the barn door. You can't go back. You're not going to be able to go back and say, whoops, now we've got, 50 lots with 2 houses. 2 houses on 3 acres. It's a lot. It's a big change for Temple.
Well, one of the other things is the state has an appeals board now, that if the towns don't do something to help assist affordable housing, then they can go beyond the board. I think this is a pretty simple thing that we're trying to do right now with the ADUs, the attached and detached. I think Carol will probably give us a good presentation on that.
So, yeah, maybe it's time for,
Yeah,
I would just state that we did a little bit of homework. We would do homework all the time on this. We've
Yeah.
been swimming in this for years, but Merrimack, since 2016, they average 10 ADU units a year,
detached.
detached. I thought it was, they've had 3 per year. They average
Oh.
10, but 3.
Maybe, yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah,
the
and that's
numbers.
Merrimack. And that,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's, I don't, we have 500 housing units in Temple. I don't envision us to have 500 ADUs. I don't envision us to even have 10 ADUs in 10 years, but that's, in my opinion, correct. Yeah. But I just don't see it. It's a complicated process to do a detached. Addition's a lot
expensive.
easier and expensive. It's a very, there's a lot to it. And so it would really have to be like an in-law or a, the young children,
Mhm.
young adults that the family wants to help out with, while they're in college or after college. It's not, the people aren't gonna be beating down the door to do this. It's not a quick, easy fix, really. It's just, we're gonna make it a little easier if we lower the lot size, which is very extreme at 6 acres. And Carol is probably gonna back that up with what she has to say. Yeah.
Mhm.
Certainly a lot of data.
Yeah.
But
Right.
look, not just the answer, but what they do.
I just remind you, people at home can't hear you. You're not.
Yeah. But you're giving us you're the exact reason why, you're giving us the reason why we have to have this rule that we cannot have any community engagement at this time in this meeting, because we'll just be interrupted. Anything that you hear that you object to or don't like will be interrupted. And that'll disrupt us as a board to do our job at this workshop with our special guest. So unfortunately,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think we need
I
to,
think the point of having them here is to ask questions and to get more data. So that's what we're trying to do and why we've invited her to come to
Yeah.
speak.
Great.
I just noticed that Russ came in and he's an alternate member of the planning board. So Russ, if you would like to join us at the table, feel free. And I'll appoint you as a regular voting member and you can participate as well in the discussion. Is there anything else before I close out on public comments? No. Okay, there's just a couple of 2 quick things before we get into the ADU. One is I just wanted to mention that I did get the affidavit from Sam Ingram about the lot numbering correction for Shelly Guy's subdivision. And he brought it over to the Registry of Deeds, so that's all taken care of. And there's a copy in the office on file, and I also posted one on the town website on her planning board case files. So that's all done. And then on Doug Guy's minor subdivision, Pete Caswell signed the Mylars. Murray signed, he's with us remotely tonight, and he will take those over to the Registry of Deeds. So Doug has his notice of decision and findings of fact document as well, and those are also posted now on the town website. So we'll move on next to the ADU, legal and planning review, and I sent out some documents. So after our last meeting, I sent them out, the proposed change that Bruce had presented, which was for detached, only under detached, to remove the language under 7B.10, which says detached accessory unit, a detached accessory dwelling unit shall be permitted, and then to strike on lots that are at least twice the minimum lot size for that district. So in the village district, it's 2 acres. In the residential rural district, it's 3 acres, so that would be 6. And in the mountain district, everything okay? Oh, you brought it. In the mountain district, that would be, it's a minimum 5 acres, so that would double, that would be 10 acres. So I sent that off for legal review, and I also sent it to Stephanie Verdile, who's with the Office of Planning Development, and brought back or sent out the questions they had and other recommendations for clarification. I also shared it with Carol Ogilvie and Ivy Vann, who's not with us tonight. I thought we would see her, but maybe not. But thank you, Carol, for joining us. So I'll turn it over to you first, and then maybe you'll take questions from board members. Does that make
Great,
sense?
thank you. Yeah, I would first like to just make a couple of comments before getting to the draft. I think what we've heard already tonight very well illustrates exactly the problems that towns are dealing with all over the state. And when this gentleman asked, what problem are we trying to solve here? It admittedly, in this corner of the state, and thankfully perhaps, we don't see it so dramatically as we see it in other places, but you've said it, it's exactly right. New Hampshire is in a housing crisis. Is Temple required to solve that problem for everybody? Of course not, but there is a state law that has been on the books for years, in fact, that's not new, that says that every town needs to provide reasonable opportunity for housing at all income levels for all residents. Now, what does that mean? That's going to mean different things in different places, but most certainly it means that your zoning ordinance has to provide for more than just single family houses on big lots. I mean, we just know that because that's not for everybody. Once upon a time, maybe more so than it is now, but today less so than it's ever been, really. In addition to that, we now have the new accessory dwelling unit law, of which you are, of course, all aware, that says every town has to allow them any place you allow single family homes. So while that may not necessarily appear to someone to be solving a problem, it is complying with the state law, and towns don't really have a choice about that. You do not have to allow detached, as you're well aware. Some towns do, many towns don't. Options for a detached would be, for example, allowing them only in a garage, an existing outbuilding, but not a separate standalone structure. So those are things that some towns have done. And then finally, I would also like to follow up on Bruce's comment that, at least in my experience, what I see as I go around the state, there are towns that have had this rule on the books for years. They've allowed ADUs even before the state law came along. But we have not seen a proliferation of them. In Merrimack, obviously, that side of the state where there's so much population that people are there, and you will always see more of that. But in most of the rest of the state, it just doesn't happen. It's expensive. It's what the homeowner does. It's not a developer that's building an ADU. And even to put one in your own home, if you do it legally and follow the building codes, and we know that doesn't always happen, but if it does, then it is going to be expensive. And to do one in perhaps, a garage or other outbuilding is going to be even more expensive. So people don't do this just because they can. They do it because they have a real need. Either it's an elderly person that needs someone else there with them, or it doesn't even have to be a family member anymore, but just someone else to be on the property to help them. And if that helps them with the expenses, that's all the better. But again, in my experience, I just don't see these things proliferating everywhere just because the law says that now you can do it. So, which is not to say you want to just open the floodgates up to everything. Obviously, you've got standards and criteria that have to be met, and that's totally legitimate. But finding a way to comply with the law and at the same time make sure that Temple stays the way people expect it to be and want it to be and love it, then that is certainly something that you need to pay attention to.
Okay. So I guess I wondered what you thought of the feedback that we got from the lawyer in particular. If you remember.
Yes, in particular, I thought that was a curious comment from the attorney regarding the detached. It seems like a potential inconsistency in that it would make every lot in essence permitted for two separate year-round dwellings for potentially multiple people families. Well, yes, sort of, except it does anyway. I mean, even if you have an ADU in your house, you're going to have a separate household. It's probably going to be a small household because of the size limitation of the apartment. And if it's a detached and has the same size limitation, the impact is unlikely to be any different regardless of where that ADU is located.
Mhm.
So technically, yes, you could say that you had two separate houses on the lot, but in my view, it doesn't change the impact of the number of people to expect in the traffic and, the impact on the water and the septic, those sorts of things. Those would, if the criteria are the same, regardless of where it's located, it seems to me that the impact is going to be the same. And they're not separate houses in the way that you would have two principal structures, because it still has to be tied legally to the primary residence. So it's not a structure that could be, bought and sold like
Right.
any other house on its own lot.
Did anybody else have questions on that in particular? Have other towns had this issue with the contradiction that you've seen? Is there different language we should have in that? I don't know if you can answer that question or if we need to talk to the
regarding
attorney,
regarding the detached, you mean?
yeah, the permitted uses question in particular, that it says one family year round. Like, would we have to change that? I guess maybe that's a question for the attorney.
Yeah, I don't think that language seems to be one family year round. I mean, to me, that's by default, it's, well, a household. I would use the term household as opposed to family. That can get a little tricky if you start trying to define families. But a household in the primary residence, a household in the ADU, number of those people limited by the size of it. Presumably these, if you build a house, it's a year-round residence, unless of course you choose to not live there year-round. But I don't, I'm not sure that I see the need to have that kind of specificity.
Okay.
I have a question. In most cases, it's going to be the case where there's always going to be an owner occupied part of that process, whether it be the larger residence or the smaller ADU that's external, but it can be either, because it might be that somebody is actually towards the later years in life looking to downsize, but maybe even pass the bigger house on to their children.
Right.
So it wouldn't necessarily have to be used in just one way. The owner could be in either property, correct?
Absolutely. And I happen to think that makes a great deal of sense, because there are many instances where older people in the big house can't or don't want to live in that big house anymore. They would fit nicely in the small one and let the kids and the grandkids move into the big house.
Yeah, we actually have data to back that up. Wilton, Lineborough, Mason, all do that. Surrounding towns to us.
I'm a little perplexed about all this, Carol. Back in the 40s, when I was a kid, I've always claimed residency in Temple. In the 1940s, there were only 200 people in the population. It's grown incrementally through the years. But it seems to me that people that move to Temple, it's like they discovered paradise and they don't want the people that they moved away from to move here. So they want the gates locked behind them. For me, I have a concern for affordable housing. I think young people need a place to stay and live and work.
And I want to add to what George said, as a person who grew up in this town, and I went and I got 2 different college degrees, and I decided to dedicate my life to rebuilding the local food system. There's no hope for me to afford anything in this town. And that should be something that should be addressed.
Well, I don't disagree with any of that. I mean, as I said earlier, we see this everywhere today. I mean, it's been a growing problem for a very long time due to lots of factors, developers not building the kinds of housing that people want, prices going up on everything, so people can't afford the single family home, even if that's what they want. But many more people today don't want that for their only option. There are many people who want would be happy with a smaller place on a smaller lot. But here in this part of the state, it's really hard to do that when you're dependent on on-site water and septic. So we know that that's an issue. I mean, you can only get so dense if you have on-site water and septic. We know that, but within that, and some of the things, as we talked about at the charrette, was starting with what you have. That you have some ADUs here in the village, and you've got some existing infrastructure here. So, that's a place to at least, start to focus on. And you have your ordinance in place, and it's certainly, I think with a little bit of tweaking, this would serve you well. I don't think this needs any kind of a major overhaul at all, just, a few language adjustments. And then in the double the acreage thing.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to actually zone in on, because that's really been our focus, is the acreage size.
Yeah.
And I know Christina had conversations with you, and I think even Ivy, not too long ago, about our 3-acre zoning. So to have a detached ADU, would have to be double the size, which happens to be 6 acres in in most of our town. And from what Christine had said, you had thought that was extreme, and that in most cases, soils determine, obviously, what land's buildable and septic, most importantly, and that it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was, you thought that it was, we didn't have to have that, and that's kind of why we're here. We had champions in the out there like you and Ivy that said that other towns are a lot smaller, and that we could start there. It was a great starting point.
Right. For one thing, even in a detached, depending upon the location, if it's connected to the septic system of the primary house, then that's sort of a no-brainer. As long as that system can be approved for that additional carrying capacity, then that's not a problem. If it needs its own system, you can still do that. And I'm sure Russ knows this a lot better than I do, but, even, given probably the worst soils, you can cite water and sewer on an acre or less, right, Russ? So, it is doable. I mean, obviously, if you had 1,000 of them in the same area, that would be a problem. But, on your standard, if you had a 2 or a 3 acre lot and you put a detached unit on it, even with a separate system, more than likely those soils could accommodate it.
If I may comment a bit, the state covers all of that anyways with the if it's a single system and maybe 2 units or a unit with an apartment or something, you still have to get the approval from the state to make sure that the septic system is large enough to accommodate the use. And if you do a secondary system, then the state has additional regulations, nitrate setbacks, and so that 2 septic systems aren't overlapping and overloading soil. So you have to accommodate that. And they have lot sizing so that you use the soils, the slopes, the things you can't use, like a well radius or wetlands. And you go through that whole formula and it will tell you what you can have on the lot or not. And so that the lot sizing, from my perspective, the lot sizing that we're talking about, the double, is it doesn't matter because the state's going to say yes or no anyways. And if the state, I think, feels that the health and welfare of everybody is fine, then I would defer to them.
So that was one of the things I think that Stephanie suggested, was updating our language to cite the language from the RSA, just to be more, in line with what the state recommends. So that was included on what I sent out, I believe. And that would be for both attached and detached.
Carol, it seems to me from the other towns that we've done our homework on, doesn't look like there's a lot of towns that are deviating from the square footage that the state recommends for the size of the ADU.
They tend, at least from what I have observed, there are a few that are 1,000 square feet, some even larger, but I think those are in the minority. Most, at least of the ordinances that I've seen in towns I've worked with, they tend to be in the 800-ish square foot range. Wanting it to definitely, I mean, by definition, accessory has to be smaller than the primary. And some will set a percentage, which could result in a pretty large ADU. But for the most part, I think they tend to be on the smaller side. Can't be smaller than 750, however. But.
Yeah, so currently our zoning right now goes with the percentage. And it's 40% for an attached and 67 for a detached. And that was one of the things that Stephanie Verdile said, her formula was a bit confusing. And so I did look at some other towns. Did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I hadn't commented on that earlier, but yes, I think it possibly is a bit confusing, but aside from that, I think it also, you could end up with any size ADU depending upon the size. I mean, if someone decides to build a 10,000 square foot house, for example, then you could have a pretty large ADU. I can't say which one is better or worse or righter or wronger, but having a number that seems to be reasonable based on, and you can pull it together from square footages that the building code requires, minimums for certain rooms. And I think that's why that 800 to 900 seems to work for a lot of people, because it's, first of all, it's a number, everyone knows what the number is, and they know what they have to do. And it's pretty much a guarantee that you're not going to end up with a gigantic apartment that could in fact, have a much different impact than if you've got a small unit with 1 or 2 people in it. And again, I'm not saying that's, you know, a bad thing to have a bigger apartment. It just really depends on how the town feels about it. It certainly provides more, I guess, opportunity in that regard. But you want it certainly to be understandable, simple enough so that people know what to do and, you know, what they have to deal with.
I think that's where we're at now is we've learned from the past that if we present too much that's confusing to the voters, it more times than not, they're not gonna, they're gonna vote no. They're not gonna, it's just if you offer too much, it's, and I'm that way myself. So I would be that way. I'd say, no, I'm not gonna vote for it. It's just, you're giving me too much information here. And it's,
Yeah.
so we're thinking, keep it simple for this year. For now, we're just concentrating on this lot size. And, you know, and we're open for other ideas, but that's pretty much our focus, I think, right, Christine? As a board, we're all in agreement that we could accept it and that we would like to present it to the town. Obviously, we're gonna have hearings, but
Yeah, I mean, I do think that updating with the RSA language around water and septic would be one way to sort of address maybe some of the concerns that we've heard.
would we be able to do that now and still have the timing for the hearing to meet the deadlines?
We don't have to submit anything
Okay.
before,
Okay,
like to the state.
yeah, I mean, I'm open to that. If that's, I just don't want to make it, I don't think we should make it too confusing.
It would still have to go for legal review.
Yeah.
I don't know if I brought the dates with me. I have it somewhere, but
You mean the dates for town meeting? Oh, yeah, you probably wouldn't make it this year. February 7th would be the deadline for getting the ballot language to the town clerk.
right. So yeah, I guess it depends on how we change it, but we plan to have the first hearing. You said January 3rd, right? And so then if there was a need for a second hearing, it would be at our next meeting. And then we would vote on whether or not to move forward to get the language in by February 7th. And I'll just remind you that I'm away for 2 weeks.
I mean, technically, you could bake it. I guess it depends politically on how, you know, how much time you want to offer the public to be able to review and comment on it, because that would be cutting, even though it's simple. We think it's simple because, you know, we're talking about this all the time.
Right. I
For
guess that's
people who
my,
are seeing it for the first time.
yeah, I guess that's my point, as I think that just making that change is not going to be as simple as we think it is.
The
So,
acreage.
yeah, just changing the acreage, because there are going to be other concerns. So I'm just trying to anticipate, you know, addressing some of those other concerns. So that the septic was one of the things that had been raised in the past. So anyone else have
And
other?
Christine, if this is Murray, a planning board member, if I could comment. Carol brought up an interesting point that in our regulation on, I think it's 7B30, this is detached ADUs. We have a minimum size for detached. We don't have a maximum. So if someone had a 10,000 foot primary, they could build a, I think it's a 6,000 foot or 6,700 foot detached ADU. So if the town wished to, there could be an addition there to set a maximum size of a detached ADU.
Mhm. Yep, that would probably, well, that might address some concerns as well. Do other towns do the number of bedrooms versus square footage, and is there?
Not so much. I have seen some, you know, that do say a maximum of 2. I haven't seen much of that, though. Primarily, it's just the square footage.
Okay.
I think that's the most common.
Do others have any thoughts on that maximum number?
I actually have a thought of 400 square feet is like a 2-car garage, like a single person living very modestly, which a lot of people in my generation are being forced to decide to do. You don't need that much space. So could it be worth like reducing the minimum for something like, I calculated out today, the 2 rooms I got in my folks' place, that's like 320 square feet about.
I think.
That's
it
good
wasn't
enough for me.
The state RSA.
Is that a state thing?
Yeah,
You,
that's-
yeah,
Okay.
you can't be less than 750. Yeah.
400, isn't
Yeah.
it 400?
It says here.
The book.
Oh, right here.
This, yeah, or it's probably in here too. She's looking, yeah. Because
My-
our zoning says 400.
Yeah. My thought process on this is, and I know Mary, you had alluded to, and Carol, you know, the 10,000 square foot house. So if that's probably going to be somebody like Tom Brady or somebody very wealthy, and they're not going to be on 3 acres of land, first and
Right,
foremost,
right.
they're not, they're going to be on 50, 100, 200. And we're going to tell them that they can only build a 800 square foot in-law apartment, and they have a 10,000 square foot house. I just don't know how that works. It would be, it's just going to be an anomaly. It's not, that's not going to happen. It's just,
Well,
I don't
without
see it.
a special exemption.
Who's gonna build a 10,000 square foot house? And how many people are gonna do that? And how many are gonna come in and then want to build their 3,000 square foot house accessory apartment? And if they do, good for them. They're probably doing, you know, and a lot more than 3 acres. They'd have to. You know,
Well-
so I just don't see that happening. I think we're looking at the very extreme situation that could
Mhm.
happen
Mhm.
once in a lifetime. I
Right.
don't think I'm far off on this.
No, I agree with you. Yeah.
Murray, did you want to say something?
So it would just require a special exemption from the zoning board.
Sorry, say that
Oh.
again?
Yeah, so in the case of a large structure with a desire to build a, large ADU, it wouldn't meet the standard planning board requirements, but that would trigger a, ZBA discussion. I'm gonna guess. So it wouldn't be prohibited, it would just elevate to the next level of review and scrutiny.
I don't think so.
Boy,
Not the way it's written now.
yeah, I don't either.
So it would not be allowed, okay?
Yeah.
So what are we thinking what other questions do we have, and what are we thinking on these changes? The owner occupied comment, Carol, that was ours says right now, the owner must be a legal resident of the property at the time of the application. And Stephanie had raised the question, what happens if a year later they move?
Right. Yes, that
And it's
needs
no
to
longer
be-
owner occupied.
That needs to be, I think, permanent. I do think that makes a big difference in how the property is maintained and the public perception of it. If the owner is always on site, at least for the most part, except for, temporary absences, that does make a difference.
So I did include some suggestions from other towns here. The owner of record must reside in either the principal dwelling unit or the accessory dwelling unit, or they must demonstrate that one of the units is his or her principal place of residence. Those were Mason and Lineborough. Wilton's was a little bit longer. At least one of the 2 dwelling units must be the principal residence of at least one owner. The 2 dwelling units must remain in common ownership, and transfer of either dwelling unit to condominium ownership is not permitted. And I don't believe we have that in our specified. So it could be, I don't see how it could be sold.
It can't.
It can't be sold.
There's one deed. There's
Yeah.
one lot. Just because it's a detached doesn't,
Yeah.
they cannot, it's not a
They can't,
condominium.
they can't sell it.
That's right. They cannot.
And by with the words of owner occupied, would that prohibit investment firms from buying a house?
Yes.
Cramming in ADUs? Okay, good.
So, I mean, I thought the suggestions that were presented by Stephanie and all made sense. And I didn't feel like they were too out of line with what we were trying to do. Updating to, to the owner occupied. The only questions I had was how we wanted to address the square footage and the percentage question. But we'd have to make that decision tonight so that I could present something for the hearing.
Mhm.
Before the hearing. Stephanie Verdial is with the Office of Planning and Development, the state. She's a professional principal planner with the state. Sorry?
We see the documents. Questions and answers.
Yeah, this is a draft document, so it's not something that it's a working document. Yeah. Mhm. Sure.
Also, to answer you, Carla, the planning board already has zoning rules for the attached and detached ADU units. So it's already on the books.
Yeah, we're just talking about tightening it
We're
up.
just trying to revise it.
So what do other board members think about the other changes? How are we feeling about making changes to the document and having something ready for January 3rd?
No, I'm all for having something ready for January 3rd. As long as we include the RSA references and putting the suggested changes here, they're in red, taking the best of the suggestions for that, for the square footage, the limits for the minimum and the maximum. I think it should be fairly clear for the first meeting. Obviously, there's going to be some input at that first meeting. But I think if we get the majority of these changes in there for that meeting, I think it'll be a pretty fine document to put forward.
Do others want to share their thoughts on that? George?
Yep.
Did you hear what Keith proposed?
No, I did not hear
Yeah,
peace.
yeah, he's the soft talker. He was saying if we do make some updates to this, that he would be comfortable, I'm paraphrasing, presenting something on January 3rd. But we'd have to go through each of the changes and vote on each change before we,
I'm all for it.
okay, Bruce?
Yes.
Not necessarily an official vote. I'm just trying to get a
Mhm.
sense of how other people feel. Russ?
Yep.
Yeah, Murray?
Yeah, I'm happy to discuss.
Okay. So I'm just going to start at the beginning then. And Carol, do you want to feel free to jump up if it sounds like we're proposing something that doesn't. Sorry. Okay, so I'm just going to start under, I think the definitions are all fine and the permitted uses. To change to household, is that something we want to do or leave it as one family?
Are we 7B or 7A right now?
I'm just looking at the first page, the definition.
Okay. Okay. I got it.
Do we have, do we want to do household or one family? Leave it as one family.
I'd leave it as one family, which is what we have now. Right?
I mean, what is the legal definition difference between one?
Yeah,
family
we
and
don't-
Household.
We don't
Is that
define it in
a
our
defined thing?
zoning right now.
Yeah.
There's no difference.
No difference.
Okay,
Leave it.
So we won't do that. So let's move down to 7A. 10. Stephanie had suggested putting the word within. Attached to, within, and part of the primary residence. And so it reads now, only one accessory dwelling unit is permitted per lot and must be attached to and part of the primary residence. So the change would be to add the word within. Only one accessory dwelling unit is permitted per lot and must be attached to, within, and part of the primary residence. And I think this was in reference to she noted this. Under 7A 70, we say the accessory dwelling unit shall be attached to or within the existing primary residence. And she thought that was duplicating, so we didn't need that part. We don't need 7A 70 if we add the word within to this.
Okay. That makes sense.
So it's just saying the same thing, just condensing.
Mhm.
So this is the first change. Is someone like to make a motion to?
To accept the change on section 7A10 to add the word within. So within and part of the primary.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay. And under 7A.25 is the next, that's the owner occupied language. It said the owner must be a legal resident of the property at the time of the application. And this was that loophole. So there were some examples I included, or we can change that. I mean, I thought Mason's was pretty simple. That says the owner of record of the principal dwelling unit must reside in either the principal dwelling unit or the accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah, I would agree to use the Mason definition in place of 7A25.
Yeah,
there a
this is
second?
Murray. I concur.
Sorry, Murray, were you seconding?
Yes.
Okay. George,
Yes.
Bruce?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
okay. And then it gets a little more complicated down to the 7A-30, which is the floor area for the purposes of this section shall be calculated as follows. And then there's the bullet points that talk about the finished living areas with full headroom shall be measured from the outside face of the structure. The area of attics and half floors shall be measured by the area with at least 4 feet of headroom. And the full area of a usable basement may be included, and garages are not to be counted as part of the living area of the residence. Which I think she recommended keeping the garage bullet point.
Isn't there an extraction from building code or from RSA?
This is different.
It is.
Yeah, Carol, I don't know if you want to comment. That's not RSA language.
Correct. No, it is not. I did want to ask, however, I have your ordinance with me, but I haven't looked at it regarding the way you define living area. Do you do that anywhere else in your ordinance for any other situation, or is it just for the ADUs?
I don't believe so.
Just ADUs.
Just ADUs.
Okay. It might be better because this appears to really single out ADUs for a very specific way of defining a living area. It might be better if you could find a simpler way to, simply state what's considered living area. And there may be some other language in your ordinance that you might be able to be consistent with.
Yeah, when we adopted this years ago, this was just from boilerplate from the state of New Hampshire. I mean, well, I might be wrong. I gotta think about this. It might have been from another town or two, but it was at the time, I remember when we adopted this, it was a pretty common.
When we calculate for primary residence, we do that. Excuse me?
Yeah. So we don't define living area anywhere else in our zoning. as far as, I mean, it's not in our definitions.
Right, it's not. I mean, for me, I'm thinking we leave it the way it is. It's been there for how many years since we adopted this?
Carol, were you able
Carol?
to find the RSA? Does it specify, we say a minimum of 400 square feet. Does the RSA say 750?
It does, yeah, that's 674-73. That you may establish minimum and maximum sizes, provided that the size may not be restricted to less than 750 square feet.
And is that for both attached and detached?
Yes, and I'm guessing that this was probably written and adopted before this specificity was put into the law.
Okay.
674, Carol, 73?
73, yes.
Is that, so that's, well, this book I have is 2020, but it should have changed, right? It's still the same RSA. Is it that's detached?
Is there, that's for detached? But there's
It
probably
does,
one for
it doesn't
attached.
say, but given that you're allowed to have detached if you choose to have them, that these standards would apply to either.
Sorry, I'm not seeing the 750. Are you?
No.
It's paragraph, it's Roman numeral 7. Under, so 674-70, I'm sorry.
Sorry, we were on the wrong page.
72,
Yeah.
72. Roman numeral 7. I gave you the wrong.
That's
citation.
750 square foot minimum. And we're,
Yes,
Restricted to less than 750.
and we're at 400.
So we got to
Right.
change that to 750
Mhm.
for both attached and,
But ours, you see in our zoning where it does say, or 750 square feet, whichever is greater.
Where am I seeing?
7,830.
7.8-30 or 0.30.
Hmm. 7A30,
See, this is where it's,
Mhm.
okay.
gets mucked up.
Yep.
Let's see.
I don't see the or greater. I see minimum floor area of 700 or 400 square foot in 7.830.
So are we still thinking we want to keep the formula, or do we then need to revisit the rest of that language? Yeah, so Wilton specifies the number of bedrooms. And they have 800 square feet, but you can request an additional 100 square feet by special exception. Lineborough had nothing on the size. And then Mason. Did you want to? Go ahead.
No, go ahead first.
I was just saying Mason had some multiple bullets. It's probably up on the screen, right?
I think the group of them, I would think Wilton's is almost the 800 square feet minimum and the 2 bedrooms, because if we're talking about septic systems, and that's really kind of what's driving,
Right.
then 2 bedrooms is how you calculate septic systems. Because you could say with the 6,700, the idea earlier, the 10,000 square foot house, let's say, how many bedrooms are in that?
Mhm.
If it's one bedroom and a giant gym.
Yeah.
That's much different than 6,700 square feet and 27 bedrooms. You know,
So that's,
I would say from my vote, whatever, I would say bedrooms and a minimum of whatever, that 750 or 800.
so at least one of the two dwelling units must have no more than 2 bedrooms and a living area of no more than 750. Is that? It's a oh, right. Yeah,
I feel like such a high minimum kind of defeats the good water the purpose of everything about this.
mhm. Yeah,
Well, this is why we did this years ago. This is why, when this was written, they did the 40% of the floor area. The 40% is a key number. I mean, that we need that number in there.
Because like a 750 square foot building, that's like pretty much like a house at that point, not like something to be an accessory of like a modest home, not in the world where people have 3,000 square foot McMansions.
mhm.
So I don't know how we do this, but I think it's important to have that 40%.
And then keep the formulas as they're written.
That, I mean, that's what I mean, we're tweaking it. If we tweak it, we're tweaking it just 50 square feet,
Yeah,
750 to 800 to be like Mason. I think,
no, I don't, I'm.
to me, the whole key to the formula, what we did years ago was the 40%.
Mhm.
You know, it's not 50%, which,
Right,
you know, would be, well, 100% would be a duplex.
Right.
Right.
So 40%, I mean, it's, in most cases, a 2,000 square foot house, that's gonna be a small,
I mean,
ADU, that was the whole intent. That was the whole intent, so
Okay.
I think
so,
tweaking that is probably not the right thing to do.
It's like 1,200.
Yeah.
Yes,
I say leave it alone. That's my vote, but you guys can do what you want.
okay, so leave that. Does anybody else want to? Well, should we vote on that? Then just, we're changing that to the 750 to match the RSA because we have to. But no other changes in that section. Is that correct?
I remember the comment. You're talking about subdivision, correct? 40% of the combined area is 60% of the existing, 67% of the existing dwelling.
Yeah, and that's why we come up with that number on the detached, 67%.
Can I get a point?
Mhm.
So 2,500 square foot house would be about 1,500 square feet, 1,800 square foot of an ADU. By adding equipment. So you're reading it wrong.
Mhm.
Well, we certainly shouldn't increase it.
No. But we do have to match the state RSA, correct?
Yeah, I'm just having a hard time, I'm having a hard time interpreting RSA 674-72, Roman numeral 7. I'm having a hard time interpreting that versus the way our language 7A30. I think it's saying the same thing, but differently. Carol, I don't know if you. Do you have both in front of you?
Is my understanding of this is that they intended to prohibit any unit smaller than 750 square feet. Because the feeling was that in early days of these, 400 was not an uncommon number for a size for an ADU.
Mhm.
And I imagine they just thought that was too small to be less than 750. It was not going to meet code and would just be too impractical.
So should we just take some of the language out of the RSA and just say the accessory dwelling unit may not be less than 750 square feet.
I mean, you could have also a maximum of a percentage, but not of the combined residences, the
Mhm.
percentage of the primary residence, for example. That, but again, so now we get into the weeds.
Right,
It starts
right.
to get complicated again.
Yeah, I think the question is the maximum, figuring out the maximum.
I mean, if a minimum isn't really useful for anything, why does a maximum matter at this point? Affordability is at the minimum.
I say we leave it alone. I say we leave it for now.
So leave it at 400.
We leave it at the way it's been for the last 20 years.
I'll second that.
Yep.
I would say yes.
Yep.
Okay.
This was approved by Bill Drescher. Back, 20 years ago, whenever it was that we did this, and if there's been updates to the, we would have known if there was updates to the RSA in regards to something that's important. So I feel the way this is written is legal and is correct.
And yeah, we did have legal review and he didn't point that out.
I was a little surprised at that neither he nor Stephanie
Yeah.
commented on that, but
Right. She just
You know?
commented that what we had was confusing to calculate, but didn't pick up on neither one of them picked up.
And it always has been. You're right. It's very confusing, but we've always thought that it was up to the selectmen because they're the ones issuing the permit to figure that math out. As the planning board, we just did what the state asked us to do, which was to present it to the town and pass it and have this zoning. So, but it's confusing, correct? But
So your motion is to leave it as is.
my motion is to leave it as is.
And
7,
you
8, 30.
seconded, yes,
Yes,
George? So, and we'll just do a vote,
yes.
Yes.
Russ?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence on this one still, so I'm gonna abstain.
Oh, Jess, Murray?
Oh, Murray, sorry. Murray, are you with us still? He may have gone out on that call.
Sorry.
Oh, you are still there.
I am
What's
still
your
here. I was
thoughts on
mute.
this?
I mean, I'm reading the RSA and it says that the municipality shall or may also establish minimum and maximum sizes for an ADU, provided that provided the size may not be restricted to less than 750 square feet. So we're currently not in compliance with the RSA.
Right.
Not be restricted to less than.
Yeah, restricted to less.
Well, we all voted except for you, Murray.
So we allow it. We're not. So I think we're okay. We're allowing it to be at least 400. We're not saying it must be less than 750 square feet. So I think we're in compliance.
Right.
So I
Yeah,
made a
so-
motion to not do anything and to leave it alone. George seconded it. We all voted.
And I concur.
You can curse. Okay. So we'll move on then to 7A-40, which is the proposal was to update it to have the language from the RSA. This is relevant to water and sewage disposal. So that first paragraph, the applicant for a permit to construct an accessory dwelling unit shall make adequate provisions for water supply and sewage disposal for the accessory dwelling unit in accordance with RSA 45-A:38, but separate systems shall not be required for the principal and accessory dwelling units. And then the rest is part of the RSA as well. What do you have up on the screen? So this would combine 7A-40 and 7A-50. Because water is addressed in the RSA, the same RSA as the septic. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we have to put in a note saying why it's been, yeah, I think there's a legal thing we have to, language we have to include.
So
but yeah.
can we not just say 7A40, our current language, and then reference RSA 485A?
Yep.
And then the same for 7A50,
Yep,
just reference those. That's my, I make the motion that we do that.
I'll second.
okay. So then it would say written state approval of adequate septic required or state approved plan in case of failure of existing system per RSA 674. Yeah. So, yeah, there's two RSAs referenced there, right? Okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. 3, yep. And yeah, one of them, yep, okay,
So do we vote?
yes, thank you,
Yes.
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 Murray? Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. So then 7A-70, this is where we took the word within and added it to the first, so that this could be removed. Is there a motion to? Yep, it refers back to section 7A-10.
Second.
George?
Yes.
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 Murray?
Yes.
Thank you. Then down to the detached accessory dwelling units, 7B. The proposal was to remove the language that says on lots that are at least twice the minimum lot size for that district.
I make a motion to remove under 7B10, the language after the word permitted, to remove on lots that are at least twice the minimum lot size for that district.
Second.
George?
Yes.
That was Russ.
Yes.
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 Okay.
Hurry.
Murray?
Yes.
Thanks. Let's see. So then I'm assuming we're just gonna leave 7B-30 alone as well. That's the formula.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah?
yeah, that would be, if you wanted a motion, I can make that motion, or we just pass over it.
Yeah, we can skip it. 7B-40 is the same change, referencing the RSAs about water and septic.
Yeah.
And that's the same for 7B-50.
So I'll make a motion to reference those RSAs for 7B-40 and 7B-50.
Okay. George?
Yes.
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 Murray?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any other that I missed?
I don't think so. Does everything make sense, Carol, to you?
It's absolutely. Good job.
Thanks. Yes, I will change the date, send out an updated version, and is there a motion to schedule the hearing for January 3rd?
Russ.
Russ,
I make a motion to move forward to have a hearing on this matter on January 3rd,
2023.
2023.
George?
Yes.
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 Murray?
Yes.
Okay. So then this will be posted. It will be in the newspaper. It'll be on the town website, paper copies available. Yeah, within the next couple of days. By Thursday, I would say at the latest. Whoop. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
So yeah, I have Carol, the Finance Authority, Housing Finance Authorities information here on accessory dwelling units, and they actually have a whole part about implementing the law, but they also have a whole page of 11 bullet points of some examples of zoning provisions that are non-conforming and unenforceable, which is kind of interesting, but one of them is limiting an ADU to only 1 bedroom. It's not enforceable. You can't limit, a town can't limit you to just
Right.
one.
Yeah.
Although we do have towns that have limited to 2. There's, you can do that, but you can't
Yes,
tell them you can only have 1.
yeah.
That's just one example but there is, it does talk about the ADU being smaller than 750 square feet right here.
Mhm.
So, and then there's other ones saying that, there's one that, it was a key one. It talked about density. That you can't use density as a reason to not allow detached ADUs. And it's a good read, but all stuff you already know. It's stuff the world you swim in.
Well, I haven't seen that particular piece. I'll have to go look for it. Because I try to keep up on this.
Yeah, this is
Mhm.
from, what year is this? This is not new, I don't
A
think.
year or 2 ago. Yeah.
2017.
17, couple years ago.
Ah,
And maybe I have seen it and forgot it already.
I think it's from New Hampshire Housing on their site.
Yeah, counting an ADU as a separate dwelling for the purposes of computing land density use. Land use density. That's unenforceable.
So just procedurally, just to let members of the public know, we will have a hearing on January 3rd. We'll collect public input. And if after that input, we decide to make any significant changes, we would have a second hearing. And then it would be presented to voters for March, if there's any changes made after the hearing. So on to the next agenda item is the FEMA maps.
Carol, thank you so much for
Thank you,
coming.
Carol. Yes.
Very welcome.
Carol and
This was-
your chauffeur.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Carol.
We understand you're not, your things aren't good down in Florida for you. Florida? Do you have a house left? Well, good luck to you on.
So the FEMA flood maps, this came to me, when last Thursday, maybe? That the preliminary maps are now available and they are, they want them to be presented to the public for input, for comments. The comments they're looking for now are, if there's, road names are incorrect or, lines, property lines, stream names, anything like that. This was, the letter went out. Did you?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah,
I just
okay.
didn't print it out.
Okay.
I did, yeah.
I think he has the maps as well. Then there's an appeals process. So if somebody looks at the maps and says, well, I think that elevation isn't correct or something along those lines, then a change could be made, but it has to be scientific or technical data. It can't just be, anecdotal. So there was a webinar and then there is a meeting scheduled for tomorrow. Although I didn't get any information on how to connect to that meeting.
Zoom,
It's supposed to be Teams, Microsoft Teams, but I don't know how that's happening yet. If I get it, I will pass that along. I did ask 2 people and I called Jennifer Gilbert with the state. She's the floodplain administrator with the state. And, she basically concurred. There's probably nothing we can do right now as a board in terms of presenting any zoning proposals for this. The maps are non-binding still at this point. They're not finalized. But we should prepare because the maps will go into effect probably within 10 months to a year after the appeals process closed, so 2024. And remember, we're not a participating town in the National Flood Insurance Program, so that means people that own property in these floodplain areas, if they want to refinance, if they want to sell and the buyer wants to get a mortgage, they will be required to purchase insurance. And if we're not participating, it will be through a private insurance company versus this program, which is significantly less. So we need to be prepared. I did print out larger size versions, which I think Keith is going to put up for us there. Yeah, so that first map, there's just only a little sliver that is in Temple. Where did I just put my, I've got too many papers here. So it's like, yeah, it's that's page 4. See, I had to number them because they were not great. So on that first map, there's just, you can see this bottom sort of triangle. That's the only part in Temple, and you can see there's no flood mapped areas, zone A, referred to as zone A in that area. So that's the far northern part of town. So that's Wilton on the right, Lineborough to the north.
Would that be near Booze?
Nope, they're on the next one.
Okay.
Good night.
Good night,
Thanks,
Carol.
thanks. So the next map is map 2. That's blown up. I have it blown up for us. Yeah. Or it's page 2 of that.
Yeah, this is the monastery up here.
Yeah, so this is right. So he gets it up there.
So Booze down here.
Yep, that's all blue.
Mhm.
And then this into Stone Gate, which
Mhm.
I don't think there's any
Mm.
surprises there.
Yeah,
People that live there know there's water.
right.
Yep, there. Yep. Whoop. Oh, okay. So there's an area along, let's see if I can even read the writing. The maps are really hard to read. It's Millbrook. And Upper Millbrook. So that goes down Converse Road.
Mhm.
And then down to North Road, crosses over onto, what is this?
Very.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
behind Stepping Stones and then across into Stone Gate. Bill Zell's property is
Mhm.
3 sides, which he knew when he bought it, and I think. Yeah, yeah, it floods every year. Yep,
Isn't there also like a flood monitoring station off of
there is.
Tottenham Road?
Yeah. Yep.
Who didn't
Yep.
care?
Yeah, I don't think there's any houses necessarily close to these except for maybe Boo's Place. On this section. Yeah, I don't think there is either. And then along Route 101 is the next section. It's also on that same, oh, you don't have it anymore, paid same section. These will be available online as well.
That's just a room.
So you can blow it up because it's really hard to read the way it's presented. Yeah, just along, again, not really many surprises along the brook run,
Blood-
along
Blood
101,
Brook.
Blood Brook,
Mhm.
a little bit behind Sarah Drive
Right.
and this is Stone Gate, I think, isn't that back there?
It abuts
still?
it, yeah,
Yeah,
it
but
does.
Stone Gate-
Yeah, and they had
but
thought that
they're
that was a trouble area there.
Yeah, yeah. So again, not really any surprises in that section.
Yeah, right, yeah.
And then Temple Brook and the reservoir. So, yeah,
Where's the school?
this is, so here's the
School's
school.
there, okay, yep.
There's the reservoir.
Right.
So a lot of tributaries coming in and out of the
Sure.
reservoir. Pine Glen Farm, and then west. And then just along Blood Brook. There were a couple that I thought, you know, people may have some concerns. There was one on Blood Road and West Road. There's a small property that like it's just surrounded. And George, I think, you know, no surprise, there's one of your properties is on here as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, again, I don't think there's necessarily any surprises, but I don't know if everybody's had a chance to look at it. But again, it needs to go out for public comment. But they asked for comment by January 12th, which doesn't really give us much time. So I guess I'm wondering how the board feels. You know, should we send out an e-blast, put it online?
Yeah, maybe.
You said by the, well,
By the 12th, right.
That doesn't give us a lot of time with the holidays.
So unfortunately, the letter went to the select board, it went to Bill McDonnell, and it went to Will Wilds. And that was in October. And I just found out about it the day after the webinar. Because I got an email from our state floodplain administrator asking for comments. So there is a webinar you can watch online, which explains the maps and how they, you know, the process for making comments or appeals. I did watch it, and so did Bill Azell, and I think Bill McDonnell also watched it. It seemed geared more towards towns that are already participating. So in other words, it was, here's what you have to do to update your ordinance now that there's changes made to your existing maps. And we're not in that situation. We're kind of starting from scratch. So my question to Jennifer Gilbert was, do we do the basic ordinance now and then update it next year, or do we just wait until we have the complete package to put together? And she felt it was too rushed, that we really needed to wait and put together the complete package once, and they will guide us through that process. The state will. I mean, the difference is if we were already participating, then FEMA would be here to help us. But we have the state to help us instead, which is still good, still helpful. So are there any thoughts on getting the information out? Do we want to do an e-blast and put it on the website? I mean, I don't want to be an alarmist, but people that live in these areas know better than we do, or at least know better than I do.
Yeah, that's.
I think it's important to do due diligence.
Yes. Yep.
That, if you don't tell people, and somebody comes back later.
Right.
But at least, just make them informed, because there are many copies are.
Yep.
So I will make them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that just going to be part of this meeting and then else, or?
No, I think I would send out an e-blast with the documents, with the maps, and if people have questions or concerns, they can email the Temple Planning Board.
I just put them in the bottom line, not put them in the product, but it's got the state one coming fixing.
The culvert. Right, right. I agree. I think giving people the information is better than not. Yes?
Sure.
Yes, I concur.
Okay, great. Well, I'll take care of that also in the next 2 days. I don't think so. No, we're just putting information out. I just wanted to see if there was any other input. Murray, do you have anything on driveway regulations?
No, my personal computer with all that information crashed over the week. And I've been recovering it slowly, and so it's taken me an extra week to make progress here.
So we'll postpone.
Yeah.
Tax map updates is next on the agenda.
I just got that extra one you gave me.
Yeah.
And this the spreadsheet I'm thinking. And this one was back to budget.
No. Yeah. So I don't know, Bruce, if you have any knowledge, because this is one of Brian's properties. And I noticed when I was looking at the flood maps that the lot on the tax map, it's Bruce should probably look at it. No, the tax map says one lot number and the tax card says a different lot number.
Is it the lot he sold on Blood Road?
No, it's the one on the corner of 101 and Webster Highway.
Oh, that's right. He owns
Oh.
that land there too. He bought that from Benoni.
Yeah, the acreage is the same, but the lot number is different.
So he bought that. There was a sliver right on Blood Brook that he bought a few years ago from the Benottis, and he added it to his bigger parcel.
Yeah,
What was that, the 50-foot strip or something?
It's just a small, yeah.
well, it's 21 acres.
Yeah,
Yeah, but he didn't buy.
Well, see, this is where I think that, where I wondered if there was, it's clear that some change has been made because it's a -2 or something like
Yeah,
that.
he bought
There
like
is-
not even an acre. I think he bought. Yeah.
There is no -1, there's no straight number, it's because he says 27, right? 27-2.
We can go on to the local account of registered deeds to see what's actually registered.
Yep.
Yeah,
And compare it with what that.
He bought it from Benoni, which was the family. I don't know if you remember where all the trees got cut. Jim Benoni. He bought it from him.
is that on the back? Just so he has the, sometimes has the who they bought it
It
from.
was it's a small sliver of land that he annexed to a
I'll see what we can find.
Yeah, no, it just has his name, so I'll put Benatti.
Benoni, Jim.
Thank you, Keith. So that can get added to the list. Yes, thank you. On the master plan natural resources inventory, as Murray brought up earlier, we did get the invoice for the second part of phase 1, so the full $4,000 for this year has been spent, and just as a reminder, the 1,000 will carry over into 2023. That's all for phase 1. On the SWRPC regulatory review grant, I did get a letter back from them a couple days ago that they did award the grant for the revised amount, which was $55,744. That was for the needs analysis and planning and the regulatory audit. So that includes master plan updates and housing needs assessment. That's part of the regional housing needs, but it will be specific to Temple. So we do need a motion to accept the grant. And there is specific language that she sent me for that. I don't know if anybody wants to read it, make that motion. Or if there's any questions, any discussion.
I make a motion to accept the Invest New Hampshire Municipal Planning and Zoning Grant in the amount of $55,744 funded by New Hampshire Department of Business and Economic Affairs as part of a 100 million Invest New Hampshire initiative with ARPA state fiscal recovery funds. This award is being administered jointly by New Hampshire Housing, Plan New Hampshire, and UNH Cooperative Extension, identifying housing academia participants.
No, that's the.
Oh, that's not part of,
That's
oh.
not-
Oh, okay, so
That's my
cooperative
next step.
extension, period.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I think it was
Keith.
Keith. Okay, George,
yes.
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 Olivia, do you want to? say this?
Murray. I
Yes.
sent it to her in an email already. Thank you, Murray. I thought I had printed the Housing Academy. So we are asked to identify participants for the Housing Academy. And that is, it's all about the community engagement piece. So they want to provide training and tips and examples for people so that when they ask for community input, you know, they get good community input, and it's not, you know, like we're forcing anything on anybody. So that's what we're looking for. I know I'd mentioned Jessica Hip had volunteered to do that. I can follow up with her. Does anybody else on the planning board have an interest in doing that? I'm trying to remember what the commitment is. It's, some is remote, some's like one weekend a month, maybe like one day a month, perhaps. They are willing to come to us if transportation is an issue. So they're very flexible on working with us. Any other thoughts? It doesn't have to be a planning board member.
Yeah, I just don't know if I can.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we don't have to answer right now. We can think about it and. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would think perhaps somebody from the Conservation Commission. Yeah, it's just to see who's available. Yeah, would be another. Mhm.
Would this be like a one-time thing?
It's a it's like throughout the year.
Okay.
Yeah, but again, like flexible.
If we do it by committee, it could be a one-time thing for you.
Yeah.
You could go once.
Do you want to think about it a little? All right, and I can send you the flyer, which I thought I had printed and made sure.
Can you send it to me again, too, please?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay. Okay. I think we're almost done. I don't think we have any updates on any of the other items. I just was going to move down to the annual report. I sent a draft of that out for input. Did anybody have any? I basically just went through our minutes from the last year.
Oh, I didn't get that.
Mhm. I think it's got it.
You emailed this to us?
I did. It went out with the agenda.
Oh.
Well, I gave him my paper copy.
Can I have this?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I haven't received an email saying there's a deadline yet, but I would like to be prepared. It's usually,
See, it's like February.
yeah, well, it's usually January, but she doesn't get everyone's until
Right.
February. So
Okay, I'll read it if I have a problem or if I have any. Anything
did
to add
anybody
on.
else have any input, any corrections, any changes at this time? No?
I'm fine.
Christine, no changes, but as we, continue to push the ADU process forward, it might be worth a paragraph in there saying we're trying to align with, state
Yes.
RSAs.
Right. I thought of that too. I didn't put that in. I wrote this before that came up.
Correct. Yeah.
So
But just say
that's
we're-
a good,
We're trying to
yeah.
comply. We're trying to.
certainly that
align
needs to be
our-
updated.
Yeah, as appropriate.
Yeah, because we had talked about it throughout the year.
Yep.
Yeah.
I haven't read the zoning yet, Keith. You're reformatted. But
Oh,
don't let
okay.
me hold everybody up. I just. Yeah.
Is there any other business? I don't think there's updates on anything else at this time. Who wants? to-
I just want to ask this gentleman here. So I wanted your take on the formula for the ADUs.
60%, 40% of the combined means 60% is the primary residence, 40% and 50%, so that the ADU is 67%
So,
of the 60%.
so if you have.
And you have it further down in
Yeah.
the regulation, if you have it correct.
So if-
Is the equation you guys are talking about, 40% of combined. So 100%, 40% means 60% is the house.
Mhm.
40%, 60%
Yeah.
Mhm.
means 2/3 is the ADU. I'm sorry, 2/3 is the
Yeah.
house, 1/3 is the ADU.
So an example would be,
And on the next page, equation.
for the detached, right? Not for the attached though. Combined, so if we,
Is 4%
Yeah, that's the
Right.
first one.
that's the attached ones.
Yeah, that's,
40% of the combined means that it is 67% of the original house.
Okay,
That's simple, right?
so if you have
When
a
you add it further down where the detached one
specifically says 67%.
of the floor
detached
area.
one is 67%.
Mhm.
There are identical equations
Mhm.
for different,
So if you had a 2,000 square foot house, just to keep it simple,
and
you wanted to build an ADU and you wanted to build it as, let's just say you wanted to build as big as you would be allowed during the zoning. It would,
be about 1,300 square feet.
so it would be 2,000 times 67%. times 67. So, okay.
And they both say exactly the same thing with different words.
Yeah, you can see it's confusing to the average person. I think.
I mean, since we're talking about personally, I would change the 40% combined. So that ADU would be 67% of the original house. Because it is exactly the same mathematically. It's just a whole lot clearer when it's reading.
Mhm. Yeah, I just, yeah, thank you, though. I just thought if we tried to change it now, it's gonna really dilute the water more than it's just gonna make it
Do it after the hearing.
next year. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you're thinking we could still make the change after
Because
the
it's
hearing
not changing the intent.
and not change the intent. Okay. So,
Yeah,
it's fine. We wanted to anyway, I think.
yeah,
right?
I mean, it still has to go for legal review, but yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, you're not changing it. Yeah, you guys are just talking about 40%. Like that. I do that, so.
Yeah, well, I gathered that. That's why I wanted to
Yeah.
hear what you had to say.
I don't do math, obviously.
When you don't need a calculator and you can just do it, I figured you. Thank you. Second,
George, your
Yes.
vote?
yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Murray?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we can end the meeting and see you all after the holiday. Oh, I do have one last thing, which is not official business.